Hello there. This is Jimmy J coming back to you live and in full color. Mr. Jimmy J to some of y'all out there. Um, I apologize for last week. Let me go ahead and get that out the air. My father had got sent into the emergency room, so it kind of threw us off for last week. But I'm glad we have such a wonderful staff here at ATR that they went ahead and rebroadcast one of our shows. But you know what? It is what it is, and we are here to be here again today. Betty Jones, stand up. Appreciate you for stepping in. Sonia Stanley, appreciate you for joining in. We want to make sure we have a live, impactful audience. I got a lot to get off my chest. I got 1 hour to do it, 58 minutes if you really want to make sure you keep a good count of it. But this is Jimmy J coming live to you in full effect, in full direct. And today, I'm going to throw back a old school throwback song. From Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes. I think this is a song that's, that song is probably about 40, 50 years old now, but it's a song we need right now in today's atmosphere, and it's called Wake Up Everybody. And the words go like this: wake up everybody, no more sleeping in bed. No more backwards thinking, time for thinking ahead. The world has changed so very much from what it used to be. There's so much hatred, war, and poverty. Wake up all the teachers, time to teach a new way. Maybe then they'll listen to what you got to say. Because there is one who's coming up and the world is in their hands. When you teach the children, teach them the very best you can. The world won't get any better if we just let it be. The world won't get any better. We got to change it, y'all. Just you and me. I appreciate y'all for stepping up and stepping forward to be a part of this broadcast today. I need to make sure we're sharing like we ain't never shared before. I got a lot of things to talk about today, but I need all the people out there in the world to make sure we're sharing and we're getting all the messages out there for everybody to understand what we're going to talk about in this next hour. It is what it is the name of the show. And the reason why we call it is what it is because you know what? We want to talk about the factors that everybody in the world are not listening to or not paying attention to closely. And two big things that I really want to get into the meat and potatoes about today is, the first one is redistricting. Redistricting is going on along the United States of America. Right now, Texas Senate approved the congressional maps that increase white majority districts in the state of Texas. You got redistricting going on in South Dakota that breaks down the deadly looms as far as how the maps and everything going on elections next year is going to change the scope. New York, you have New York, you having all these things going on with these lines. And guess what? We're not paying attention. They're going to change some things and it's going to make it real poor representation out there. Montana even having problems where they're attacking how the lines used to be drawn because we're making changes out there in America. Gerrymandering is killing the democracy here in our state of United States of America. It is making it where it's harder for people to stand up and do what's right, and that is vote. All because, you know what, we took a stand last year and we voted in America. And we changed out a president of the United States, and states like Georgia, we changed out our United States Senate representatives. But guess what? The war has not ended and the war has not stopped. It just began, y'all. And guess what? Like we showed up to the polls last year, we need to be showing up to the polls in all our municipal elections, our county elections, and our localized elections this year so we can change out local, because I want everybody to understand politics always starts local and it maneuvers up into the federal ring. So when we talk about local, we're talking about your mayors. We're talking about your aldermen, alderwomen, your council people, your localized commissioners. We're talking about your county commissioners. We're talking about all your local people who affect permanent change in your community. They're the ones who make sure that you have good roads, good schools. They're the ones that make sure that you have those stoplights that stop at 30 seconds instead of stopping at an hour. They're the ones who make sure that flooding doesn't happen in your community. They're the ones that make sure to regulate that when we have utilities like the power company, the water company, and anything that deals with your life, is all affected by politicians. And guess what? Gerrymandering is starting to happen. And gerrymandering is not just something you do on the federal level, it is also something that is being done on your local level. I know for a fact in my own community, in my community of Chatham County, they're getting ready to look at the lines in the county, and then they're also going to look at the lines in the municipalities across the county. This is not just something going on in my community. This is something going on in your community. Anywhere in the United States of America, be ready, because the lines will be changing and those lines will affect you for the next 10 years. So when I ask you to do this right here, do me a favor. Talk to your local officials tomorrow. Call them Monday. Call them Sunday. Catch them at church if you have to tomorrow. You need to get in contact with your local elected officials and let them know you want to know how the lines will be drawn, because you want to see effective change happen in your community. But it won't happen unless you step up, stand up, and call them out when they bluff you and BS you around. Hey, everybody, do me a favor. Go out there and share. I will repeat all I just said. I appreciate you, Sonia. I appreciate you, Riley. Donnie Black, always good to see a good friend there. Thomas, I appreciate you being with me. Sonia, share. Make sure Ramona gets on this call. Stardacia, I appreciate you. Yes, I'm going to push this show. I apologize once again for not being here last week, but I need y'all to share. Brian, I sent it directly to you, so I hope to see you on the thread somewhere. But I want to put this out there and make it clear. You know, they said this 45 years ago, 50 years ago. Wake up, everybody. No more sleeping in bed. No more backward thinking. Time to thinking ahead. The world has changed so very much from what it used to be. There is so much hatred, war, and poverty. Wake up, all the teachers. Time to teach a new way. Maybe then they'll listen to what you have to say, because they're the ones who's coming up, and the world is in their hands. When you teach the children, teach them the very best you can. The world won't get any better if you just let it be. The world won't get any better. We got to change it, y'all. Just you and me. We have to be the ones who effectuate change. I am talking to my new politicians out there. I'm talking to my people who like to rebel rouse and stir up the conversation in our community. No more time for us to sit back and allow the elected officials we put in office to go ahead and do what they do for us. We need to make sure we chin checking and making sure these elected officials, I got to pull my mic, make sure these elected officials are doing their job. And if we're not doing that, then shame on us. It is on us. People, I want you to understand that gerrymandering is real. Gerrymandering is serious. And what's happening is our lines are being redrawn across these United States of America. There are cases of deception, thievery, and lies being done in our community. What's happening is they're redistricting the lines so they can flip the U.S. Congress into their hands, as far as making it not a people Congress, but a politician Congress. Or it's going to be a war when the haves will keep control and the have-nots will be forgotten. But we're waking up in America. We're waking up like Harold Melvin in the Blue Note said almost 45 years ago, when they said, wake up everybody, no more sleeping in bed. We have to make sure that we're challenging our systems. I know for a fact in my community, as I stated before earlier, that the lines are going to be redrawn. The lines are going to be changed in my community. What's happening is, because of the growth around my area, because of the growth in Port Wentworth, because of the growth in Garden City, because of the growth in Pooler, because of the growth in Savannah, the map that we used to see in Chatham County will be not anymore. City of Savannah people, to my people at my home area, City of Savannah, your maps are going to be the next set of maps is going to be redrawn. And guess what? It's going to be drawn in favor of those people who are in control of the dollars and cents in our community. I said it. You heard me. I said it. We have to stop the dollars and cents from controlling our community. And we need to make sure that our community is strong and with the fists up in the air saying we will not tolerate it anymore. It's time out for certain communities to make sure that they get the power lines taken care of, with the trees being cut around it, where they don't have to deal with issues as far as drainage issues, as far as those things with the streets, speed bumps, and all that stuff. It's time out for that. It's time up for us to make sure that we're challenging our elected officials and make sure we hold them accountable. But guess what? There is a war against us because redistricting is going to move that line forward. That starting line is going to start further away from where it was, and it's going to make it very, very hard for us to be able to we have to do. So I'm going to say it again. I didn't say it 3 times. I appreciate everybody for joining on this platform. But I ask you to do me a favor is share, 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 share. People are scared to share these kind of messages. You know why they're afraid to share these messages? Because the politicians have failed us. It's time out for us to patting them on the back and saying you're doing a good job when we're failing in our communities. If our schools are failing, our next generation fails, and then we are a community of failure. Believe it or not, people are targeting us as African Americans because they want to remain us in the working class and what they brought us here to America to do. And y'all don't want to hear me on that one. I know I'm going to lose about 5-6 people when I say the truth. We as African Americans were never brought here to be designed to be equals among those people we sit in the community with. We were designed to be the working class body of people. Yes, some of us have become successful, assimilated, and become popular and have created wealth. And I am 100% with that group of people who do that assimilation. But I'm talking about the lion's share of us, the African Americans, who have been told to remain in poverty, who've been put in situations where we cannot put on our bootstraps and get out of the line of the working class and become a part of the American class as far as wealth is concerned. Yes, we have wealthy African Americans from our community. I'm going to say it again, just in case you think that I'm just being biased and prudent. We have wealthy African Americans in our community, but that percentage of wealth is small in comparison to what we have been owed in these United States of America. Y'all, I'm gonna pause there because I want to make sure that those people who don't want to listen to what I got to say can go ahead and hang up and say they didn't have nothing to do with that broadcast and they weren't listening to what I had to say. Yes, America, African Americans, Black Americans, whatever we want to be called today, we have a fight on our hand. And I want to be sure and frank with you. It is not always a fight with white America. Sometimes we fight amongst our own population, our own people, the same people who carry the same color skin as you and me. But you know what? We're afraid to call them out. But you know why we're afraid to call them out? Because we have been a peaceful people all our lives. But it's time out for that peace, y'all. It's time out. It is time for us to wake up. Wake up, everybody. No more sleeping in bed. No more bad thinking. It's time to start thinking ahead. And that song is 45 years old. Unfortunately, in today's society, 2021, we still need to listen to that song over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. Because it's so much power in that song that it translates to still almost 50 years later, we are still struggling with the fact that as African Americans, we have not woken up. Yeah, I said it. I said it. We have not woken up. We need to create our own agenda, and we need to press the local, the state, and the federal to make sure that they listen to what our agenda is. Agenda items like this, we were never given the opportunity to have one leg up. Every time in society, in American society, where we as a community put our bootstraps together and we tried to assimilate and tried to create our own set of wealth, we were always denied, torn away, or destroyed. If you don't believe me, check out Tulsa. If you don't believe me, check out Rosewood. If you don't believe me, check out Wilmington. If you don't believe me, check right here in Savannah, Georgia. It's always been an opportunity where when we tried to put our bootstraps on, our boots were taken away from us, our shoestrings were taken away from us, we were given bad boots, or something happened to our community. And it's time out for that. We need to make sure that we get, you're right, Sonya, we got to start getting uncomfortable and we got to start showing up to the polls. There's a reason why, and I'll go ahead and bring it to Georgia, y'all, because I'm a Georgia boy. There's a reason why Senate Bill 202 exists. The reason why Senate Bill 202 exists is because you know what? We started waking up and we started seeing democracy for better for ourselves. But it's twofold to that, y'all. We got to find politicians who going to represent us, who ain't afraid to take the black agenda to the man and to the government structure, whether it be on the state level, local level, city level, whatever case may be. We got to find politicians who ain't afraid to do that. We gotta stop supporting politicians who got yellow clothes on. Y'all know what I mean. Them yellow clothes politicians are the worst politicians we got in our community. I'm not calling no names out today, but I promise you, as this goes on further, we're going to get to that point. We're going to get to the meat and the gravies. The problem with our community right now is twofold. We got to get people who are not afraid to step forward and push the legislature that we need for our community. There's no different from the Jews. There's no different from the Orientals. There's no different from the Asians. There's no different from Hispanics. There's no different from even white people. All of them step up to the gate and they find people who represent them and put legislative policy out for them. And guess what? I'm going to be the first one to say it if nobody else does it. If it's a white person can do the job for me better than a black person who do the job for their own skin tone, then I'm going to start pushing white people, Oriental people, any kind of people who are willing to make sure that they take care of all the people in our community. That's what it's all about. It's no more time out for the whole thing of voting for black because they black, because it's a lot of black people who really got yellow skin on the outside. And if we're not willing to go ahead and support those people who are willing to push the black agenda, then we need to sit back, stand back, and just let everything flow, because that's just what we've been doing. When you say you don't have things or resources in your community, then you need to address it and call out your leaders. But a lot of times we are too afraid to do that, and that's why we get the yellow belly people who only come around come election time. Watch this. You don't see none of them people. In 2020, we elected. You don't see none of them. And I call it out right here. I have not seen the federal ones come talk to me. I have not seen the local ones come talk to me. I have not seen the county ones come talk to me. And I haven't seen the state level ones come talk to me. You know why they're not talking to me? Because they don't want to hear the black agenda. They don't want to hear the agenda of the people. And that's what we need to be standing up, putting forth an agenda for the people. Wake up, everybody. No more sleeping in bed. No more backwards thinking. Time to think ahead. The world has changed so very much from what it used to be. There is so much hatred, war, and poverty. Wake up, all the teachers. Time to teach a new way. Maybe they'll listen to what we have to say, because there is the ones who's coming up. They're the ones, the world is going to be in their hands. When you teach the children, teach them the very best way you can. I need y'all to share, share, share. I ain't finished yet, but I'm going to drop the gerrymandering conversation and the redistricting conversation, and I'm getting ready to flip to the next conversation, which is COVID-19. Let me tell y'all something about COVID-19. You know what? When I first got involved in COVID-19, I thought it was just going to be a problem. I didn't think it was going to be any issue, anything like that. I figured it will slide in and slide out. Let me tell y'all something, y'all. COVID-19 is real. And there's a fact that they're not putting out there that I want to make sure everybody understands. COVID-19 has orphaned almost 140,000 children in these United States of America. I'm going to say that again because somebody did not hear it. COVID-19 has orphaned almost 140,000 children here in America who have lost parents, caregivers, and those people who are taking care of them. I see those people. You don't want to hear it? Then log off, because the truth is the truth, and the truth will set you free. I'm not here to pacify you and call you, hey, how you doing, good friend? I'm here to take care of you. Hey, how you doing, good friend? Hey, how you doing? How you doing? I'm not here to do that, because you know what? It's time out for that conversation. It's time to start calling a spade, and it's time to start making sure that we're doing everything we're supposed to be possibly can do. And see, children are facing orphanhood as a result of COVID, and it is called a hidden or global pandemic that has sadly not spared in the United States any kind of population. It is time to make you right, Miss Jones. It's time to start telling the truth. But you know what, Miss Jones? They don't want to hear the truth. People want to hear cookie cut stories where they can pacify the truth and they can go out there on their merry way while people are losing their lives, people are losing their jobs, and people are losing their sanity right here in these United States of America. But we don't want to talk about that. What we want to talk about is how good everything is, how great everything is, how we are making it through and everything like that. This thing is serious. And so those people, I'm going to do a shout out. Those people in Chatham County, where I'm from, if you want to make sure you get the vaccine, they're doing vaccine and they're doing testing for COVID-19 at JC Lewis Primary Healthcare. That's where I go as far as my thing is concerned. They'll get you in, get you out within an hour's time. Shouts out to them. A. Phillip Randolph has an event. If you go to their page, they got an event from 9 to 12 tomorrow. Please, whatever you do, get your vaccination shot. I studied the Tuskegee Project. I studied African American history as far as how this thing how other diseases in the past have affected African Americans. This thing is too true. I want everybody to get vaccinated. I want everybody to get safe out there. This is not a game. This is not something to play with. We need to make sure we're doing everything we possibly can to make our world safe. There are almost 1,500 deaths almost on average, I believe, per day. And like I said earlier, 140,000. 140,000. 140,000. 140,000 kids in these United States of America that have been permanently affected as becoming orphans because their caretaker or a parent has become deceased. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. You absolutely right. I appreciate it, Sonya. It's a long one there. I appreciate it. And so with those two topics right there, those are the two things I really wanted to get into the meat and the gravy as far as talking about is concerned. But you know what? I know I said one song, but I got to drop another song out there. And I don't own no rights to none of these songs. I don't want to get ATR, Jay Jones, or anybody else in trouble, or Jimmy Jones in trouble. But I want to say it one more time. Wake up, everybody. No more sleeping in bed. No more backwards thinking. Time for thinking ahead. The world has changed so very much from what it used to be. There is so much hatred, war, and poverty. There is a war on the poor, y'all. There is a war on the poor. Across the United States of America, gentrification has moved African Americans from centralized locations in major metropolitan cities across these United States of America, and they have been moved to the outskirts further away from the resources. Y'all got it. Far away from the resources that get them, like hospitals, like transportation, like adequate housing, like food. The resources have been moved. They have been moved further away on the outskirts, away from the resources, making it difficult for African Americans, poor African Americans, to survive in this structure. We have a war on the poor going on right now. We have to make sure our next generation is prepared to fight stronger and harder than what we ever had to do. You know what? We had music. We had music like the Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes. We had music like the OJs. You know, I'm gonna talk about the OJs in a minute too. We had music like the Jackson 5. We had music that touched our soul and kept morality and kept ethics in our heart. But guess what? We no longer have that. And now we have music that pushes death, pushes poverty, pushes that way of life that we need to be struggling away from. But you know what? That's not what we're here to talk about. Because my neck and Earth, Wind, and Fire, you absolutely right. Tony, they're going to get mad at me because I'm a strong supporter of Earth, Wind, and Fire. Earth, Wind, and Fire. But my next point that I want to talk about, I'm going to bring another song out there, y'all. I don't own the rights to these songs, but these songs were powerful. Powerful. See, let me tell you something. In our community, yes, sir, Harvest for the World, Ozzy Brothers, I love you, Sonya. Let me tell you something. If you don't understand this, I'm about to break it down. You see, in our community, like I said earlier today in this conversation, it ain't always white folks. See, we always give white folk and the devil too much credit. Sometimes the same skin folk ain't your kinfolk. I'm going to say it again. Sometimes your same skin folk ain't your kinfolk. And a lot of them fall temptation to the love of money. Some people got to have it. Some people really need it. Listen to me, y'all. Do bad things. With that, you know what I'm saying? Talk about cash money. I'm talking about money. Talk about cash money, dollar bills. Why, y'all? See, I broke that down because the OJs told us the best conversation there is. They'll steal from their own mother. They'll rob their own brother. They'll even talk. People can't even walk in the street for that lean, mean green. Backstabbers is another good one. See, when we talk about the love of money, y'all, a lot of times, a lot of people in our communities, they do bad things. Because you know what? The love of money ties to equity as far as what they need and what they have to survive. You see, a lot of people don't even understand that the love of money has skewed them from even taking away family members, people in their household, people in their life, and keep them in the struggle. You see, we got to understand this. We got to hold America accountable for making sure equity is fair and prosperous to all of us. So therefore, we don't have to deal with those one or two brothers and sisters in our community who steal, kill, and destroy. That's biblical right there. Who kill, steal, and destroy. What we really need, what we really need is we need people to wake up and make sure they run for politics. But you know, at the same time, I tell this to my good friend all the time. What we need to be doing is this. We need to build a structure so strong, so powerful, that when we find good young people who want to lead and want to run for office, we put them in a position where they don't have to depend on any economic piece out there, and they can survive and create policy to change the narrative in our community. But I'm gonna tell you this, and for the next couple of weeks, this is my challenge to everybody out there in our community. We need to start writing down what the Black agenda looks like for your community. You need to make sure that we're talking to the young generation, and we're talking to the old generation, and we're talking to the current generation. So we are collaborating together to create the best for all generations moving forward. But it takes time, commitment, and challenges, but it also takes an unselfish mentality to make sure we progress in this manner. See, I can build my child up because me and my wife understand how to build my child up. We're going to make sure that we build him where he survives in society. Every child in the Black community doesn't have a two-parent household, doesn't have a household who does bring enough equity to cover the basis or cover the stream of life, what needs to come, or those things that come before us. So what we have to do is we have to go back to the village mentality. And the village mentality is the only way we can overcome this money crunch that actually comes against us. See, people gonna love money. You can't stop that. People gonna love. See, a lot of people don't realize America was built on the love of money. They call it capitalism, but I call it for the love of money. And basically, I can't get mad at somebody who loves money because the simple fact is that's what this society was built on. Now, we tried to put Bible in there. We tried to make sure we put ethics in there, morality. We had at one point in time a culture that actually professed it through songs and music and everything like that. But guess what? The American society that understands and controls capitalism has flipped the game. And what they've done is, rather than building the culture through music, they're destroying the culture through music. That's why you have the kind of music that you have in this world. You don't have those artists that we had back in the day that taught us that, be prideful about yourself, to make sure that you don't love money, to make sure you wake up. You don't have this kind of music because you know why? The society that controls capitalism, and it's not white society, it's a capitalistic society. The society that controls capitalism understands that if you keep the mind dormant, you keep it out of preview of understanding the real nature and the true power of what you got as a group of people, as a village, as Jennifer Marshall just said, as a group of people. When we go back to that village mentality, that's when we become great. And see, my thing is, I want to make sure we understand with the older culture, we're not going to go back to that old school village mentality. That old school village mentality is everybody came together in one community and did what they. We have to kind of shift make that village mentality. And when I say that village mentality, we have to listen to the young folk and how they communicate. They communicate through social media. They communicate through text message. They communicate through cell phones. They communicate through the nuances of new ways of communicating. We have to make those become villages for ourselves. I think, and I will say this for myself, it is more important for us as the older generation to learn their language so we can start coding in their language so we can make sure we're building what needs to happen, because the young people message is not getting out there. And a lot of times in our community, the reason why we don't move forward, I'll say it slow. A lot of times in our community, the reason why we don't move forward is because you know why? The older generation is controlled with the keys of the car, and they driving the car like Miss Daisy, 5-10 miles an hour. And guess what? We're not getting anywhere in our community. It's so important. If you want to get biblical, it's always you got to be in what days? It didn't say you had to be in the old age. It didn't say you had to be during the civil rights age. It didn't say you had to be during slavery age. The Bible even says you have to be in the present age, and understanding we can't keep control because we got control of the keys, because we have the historical knowledge. We can't hold back the next generation from being able to be celebrated. And that's what we do in our community. See, a lot of people don't want to hear that. I'll lose. A lot of people going to drop off from this. They don't want to hear this conversation. But guess what? We got to give them keys up. We got to give them keys up. We got to let them young people drive the car sometimes. And if they wreck it, we'll just go ahead and pacify, find a new car, and start driving again. But if we don't allow the next generation to step forward and become leadership, we're going to crash all us into a valley, into a desert, or into certain destruction. It's no longer, if we know we don't need to drive on the highway, why do you not give up the keys to the car? And so I will say this first. We got to stop giving so much credit to capitalism. We got to stop giving so much credit to white folk or white people or whatever. We got to start seeing what are we doing wrong first in our house. The old people used to say this: sweep around your own back door before you sweep around mine. And a lot of times we are so busy taking our new broom and going into other people's houses, and we ain't cleaning up our own mess in our own backyard. And that's what we need to do as African Americans in the black community. We need to start holding folk accountable. And when elected officials are failing us, we need to vote their behinds on out. And we need to tell them, here's your walking paper. You don't need those keys to that car no more. Thank you. I'll be glad to have that. And we'll trade that car in and get a new car that a young person can drive and make it successful for our community. If you want to change the community, you got to go ahead and break the cycle. And a lot of us aren't willing to do so. But guess what? We're going to keep in our runt until we're willing to do something. My good friend, Ramona Drake, how you doing? I'm glad to see you in the house. Sonia, yes, won't give up the keys to the kingdom either. You're absolutely right. But until we do what we got to do, until we hold those people accountable, we're going to keep struggling more and more and more. And what we got to do is, in this election cycle, you got election cycle every single November, y'all. Every November, there's an election cycle in your community. Every November, and there's not one community across the United States that don't have an election cycle in November. When November comes around, you need to make sure that whoever's on that ballot, you show up and you vote yes or no on that person. And when you vote for somebody, if you vote for Jay Jones, you come and you hold Jay Jones accountable. And I'm going to put my name out there because that's the person I'm going to pick on today. But we must do everything we possibly can to make sure it's happening. Natalie, I was going to call you out. Thanks for joining the show, Natalie. I appreciate it. We must stay engaged. You're absolutely right. We cannot fall off the engagement trail. What used to piss me off so bad was when I was an elected official and I would go on and people would come up and say, Jay, you're doing such a fine job. You doing, and I used to be big headed the first 2 years. I am doing a fine job. You're absolutely right. I am doing a fine job first 2 years. And in my last 2 years, I started thinking, what the heck am I doing that they're saying is a fine job? And so when people come to me and say, Jay, you're doing a fine job, I say, is there anything in particular that I need to work on that I wasn't doing or was doing as a fine job? And nobody could give me an answer. Now, I'm not saying I wasn't doing a fine job, y'all. But what I'm saying is we need to hold folk accountable. Tell me what I'm doing fine as a job is concerned. Because you know what? At the same time they told me, they would tell elected officials who served up there with me, oh, you doing a fine job too. And I used to look at them like, what the heck is he doing that's a fine job? Because he ain't doing nothing that's a fine job. But you know what? We don't hold folk accountable. We are more concerned about people who are friends because we don't want to make friends mad at us. I'm going to say it slow. We don't want to make friends mad at us. We want to make sure we be friendly with everybody under the sun. We want to make sure that everybody likes and adores. We won't rebel rouse. We won't rub anybody the wrong way. We won't call nobody out because we don't want to be in the doghouse for nobody. And that's the sad thing about politics. Everybody needs to be in the doghouse. You know why all of them need to be in the doghouse? Because guess what? If they're not in the doghouse, they're going to put us in the doghouse. It's either them or us. And my thing, quite frankly, moving forward, it's going to be them because they're supposed to be the person who represents what my interest is and what my conversation is. And if they're not doing it, shame on them. If they're not doing it, get them out of office. And that's where we need to be at, y'all. You know what? I got to say it one more time because two of my favorite people, two or three of my favorite people joined in, and so they didn't hear the first part, but I'm gonna say it again for them. We got to wake up, everybody. Wake up, everybody. No more sleeping in bed. No more backward thinking. Time to think ahead. The world has changed so very much from what it used to be. There is so much hatred, war, and poverty. Wake up all the teachers. Time to teach a new way. Maybe then they'll listen to whatever we have to say. Because they're the ones who's coming up. The world is in their hands. When you teach the children, teach them the very best you can. And I'm going to close out my last 20 minutes talking about that last line right there. Teach them the very best you can. I can only talk about my community. At one point in time, Savannah State University was the school that put out all the teachers in Chatham County. And you know what? Some of them teachers were the finest, best teachers that money can ever buy. They challenged us. They held us accountable. When I was in school, somebody did bad. They didn't go to the principal's office. The teacher took care of it right then and there, and they had 40, 50 minutes of instructional time. But guess what? In the black community, y'all, things have changed 20, 30 years later. Now, our kids no longer have that opportunity. They're labeled from Jump Street. If you bad in first grade, you're going to be considered bad in 10th grade, no matter how much you've changed. And that's not right. Because the teachers we grooming nowadays don't have that same strong mentality of the teachers who actually taught me almost 25 years ago. It's more or less we babysit more. We push kids up from one grade to the next grade. Yeah, I see people logging out. I will log off too because you don't want to hear the truth. They're teaching kids as far as making sure that they're not getting the IEPs and all these other things that's being put in these kids' folders. And guess what? They are hurting our kids. And you know what the problem is? I don't blame the teachers, y'all. Y'all ready? I don't blame the teachers. I blame the parents. And why I blame the parents is not that I blame the parents because I understand the parents have to work jobs and do all this stuff like that. And my point and counterpoint as far as blaming the parents, we need to show up to the polls. And guess what? We need to make sure we have elected leadership who understands that parents, especially single parent households, cannot put the time in like they used to do back in the day because those are issues out in our community. Economics is an issue in our community. Crime is an issue in our community. Homelessness in kids is an issue in our community. And these issues are not being addressed by those school leaders. Those school leaders should be held accountable. And when we talk about holding these school leaders accountable, guess what? I hold the parents accountable because in the last few elections, guess what's not happening? Guess what's not happening? The parents of the kids in the schools aren't showing up to the election to vote the right kind of people in office. Now, this is a 2-point situation now. I blame the parents, but I also blame us because we're not putting people in office. We have 1 or 2 people who do get in those positions. But guess what? You have to have a majority source as far as that's concerned. And I'm not here talking about Chatham County, y'all. I'm talking about across the United States of America. There is a failure. There is a tremendous failure with leadership in school systems because what has become the main thing when it comes to schools, what has become the problem is the constructions of new schools, the advocacy of making money from schools, and not the children as far as being the focal point as far as these schools are concerned. Yes, we must be advocates for our children even when we didn't birth them. We are the village, and I agree with you wholeheartedly, Natalie, because the only way we're going to change it is we have to be willing to step up and become leaders on the school board. We cannot leave it in 1 or 2 people's school board hands and make sure that the issues, it works for us. We got to make sure we change out school boards just as much as we change out the local issues and everything else. Because when you go across the board, across these United States of America, I'm going to tell you one thing. A lot of y'all don't know this. When we go across the board, when these United States of America, 51% of the budget that's collected through taxes goes to the school system. 51% across the board, the United States of America, goes into the school system. People have realized, economics has realized, capitalism has realized, people in charge have realized the school system is probably one of the biggest money pits in America. And instead of using that revenue to benefit the kids, we have been using that revenue to benefit construction companies, private industry, economics, and capitalism. But you know what? If we're not willing to challenge those seats, if we're not willing to call out those bad politicians in our school system, we're going to continue to feed in this system. The reason why poverty across America has skyrocketed is because we have focused capitalism into government structures and not held capitalism a check from the government side. Government should be about fixing and maintaining and working for all people, not just some people. But if we're not willing to step to the gate and vote, voting has become so much more sophisticated from when our ancestors did all the fight for us to get voting. It has become more sophisticated because you know what? Now we have the opportunity to see how you vote. Ms. Jones, they can tell me what elections I voted in the last 25 years, how I voted. They won't tell me who I voted for, but they'll tell me how I voted. They'll tell me if I'm a Democrat. They'll tell me if I'm a Republican. They'll tell me if I'm a leaning person. They'll tell me if I only vote in general elections or I vote only in primary elections. This country has gotten so sophisticated with understanding the votes that's why things like Senate Bill 202 exist, and that's why they're doing everything they can to make sure the House Bill 1 and House Bill 4, or the John Lewis bill, as most people call it, don't get passed. Because if things like John Lewis bill gets passed, then guess what? It makes it equitable and fair, not just for people, but for government structures as well. But we have to do our part locally to make sure local seats are filled with people who have the heart for people. No more politicians. I sit back. I don't challenge. I don't conversate. I don't say much about the politicians now. But if a politician spends too much time talking about what they used to do and how they used to act, or who they were kin to or who they were friend with, and they can't give you policy that changes the narrative, then they should not be elected in our community. I said it, and I know people are going to drop off, and they're going to say, there go that James again. He around here calling out the truth again. The reason why we have the issues in America is because politics has allowed it. And you know what? I'm blaming us because we're not showing up to the polls in mass numbers. Because guess what? I can tell you right now, I put $100. Anybody, you can call me tomorrow. 912-228-2205. Call me tomorrow. If you want me to give you a tour, you take me to any place in my community and you tell me to pull up how that community voted. I can tell you the lower voter turnout is also the communities that have potholes in the street, bad roads, have high rental rates, have all kind of negative issues in those communities. Because guess what? Those people don't vote. And the communities that have all the resources, they vote in the 70, 80 percentile. If you want better resources, show up to the polls and vote. Even if you don't vote for nobody on that ballot, you make sure you take that puncher, you put it in, and you don't vote for nobody. At the end, you say you want to turn your ballot in, just so they can know you show up to the polls. That's the way we need to be. And it's time out for us. It's time out for us. Stop saying we don't have good representation. If you want better representation and you can't find it, then you need to step your behind up and you need to run for public office. It's time out of waiting on somebody to come, waiting on Superman, and everybody know Superman, his Achilles heel is kryptonite. It's time out for Batman when we all know that his Achilles heel is he's human. And when you get through that metal, he bleeds just like everybody else. It's time out for us to stop waiting on superheroes to save the community. And it's time for us to step forward and save our own damn communities. And if we're not willing to do so, we're going to keep falling prey to the issues that be. Yes, ma'am. Be the change you wish to see. And that's the easiest example I can probably see. Tell the truth and shame the devil. You absolutely right, Sonya. And you know what? A lot of people are not going to be happy hearing what I got to say, but we're going to make sure I'm going to tell ATR to broadcast this 3 or 4 times because we need to make sure the message is clear. And I want to move on to other topics, but unfortunately, I can't move away from us waking up because that's the biggest problem we have in our community, y'all. Black people, we got to wake up. Brown people, we got to wake up. Poor people, we got to wake up. We got to hold our candidates and those people who are trying to be our leaders and hand accountable. And so I'm at the 49-minute mark. I want to make sure that I answer any questions. I want to see what other platforms we want to discuss in future settings. I want to make sure shouts out to all my faithful people who follow me. All I know how to do is speak the truth because at one point in time, when I die, Sonya, when I die, guess what? I want to make sure I go above and not below because you know what? The only way we're going to get through this thing is working together. If you are not willing to do this, then please get out of our way. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Wake up and stay woke. Yes, ma'am. Beating a dead horse. That's what we keep doing. We keep beating a dead horse. That's why when you go to Tatumville, they're getting 15, 16 letters trying to sell their properties. When you go to Southside in Chatham County, they're getting 15, 16 letters selling their properties. Sylvan Terrace, 15, 16 letters selling their properties. But I can tell you one place they ain't getting no letters. They ain't getting no letters over in Owsley Park. You know why? Because those people understand how to block and how to make sure they maintain their property. You're not getting anything in Kensington. You know why? Because Kensington know how to blockade. Gordon, those downtown quarters, they know how to blockade and keep that property strong and locked in. Pool the same conversation. They know how to lock in and block those properties to keep it stronger. They not only know how to blockade and keep those properties stronger, but they also know how to blockade and keep the politicians in office to keep their community structure the way they want to keep it. If we want better, we got to do better, we got to show better, and we got to act better. And all those things are tied to, we have to wake up, everybody. No more sleeping in bed. No more backwards thinking. Time to think ahead. The world has changed so very much from what it used to be. There's so much hatred, war, and poverty. Wake up all the teachers. Time to teach a new way. Maybe they'll listen to whatever you have to say because they are the ones who's coming up and the world is in their hands. When you teach the children, teach them the very best you can. Wake up, all the doctors. Make the old people well. They're the ones who's suffering and who's catching all the hell. But they don't have so very long before the judgment day. So won't you make them happy before they pass away? Wake up all the builders, time to build a new land. I know we can do it if we lend a hand. The only thing we have to do is put it in our mind. Surely things will work out. They do every time. The world won't get any better if we just let it be. The world won't get any better. We got to change it, y'all. You and me. And that's an infectious song almost 50 years ago written. And guess what? We have to step up and we have to make sure that Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes, almost 50 years later, that message was given to us. And we shouldn't have to wait another 50 years to understand what the words was really trying to tell everybody. We have to wake up, y'all. If we're not willing to wake up, we're going to keep being destroyed. Savannah's end game. I agree with you. The devil came down to Savannah and brought his soul. And boy, I tell you, I'm trying to make sure that we understand this is not just a localized problem. This is a universal problem. This is a universal problem. But the problem I get to see it up front and in person right here in my own community. And guess what? We have a lot of people who are struggling and tired of seeing no change happen. And then guess what? We step forward and we ask people to run for office and get in these positions. And what did they do? They got in those positions, they got quiet, and they let us down. And so this is something that we have to keep challenged in the back of our mind. We have to make sure that greed, money, prestige, as Ramona just said, we got to make sure that these things don't persist in our community. We have to start being willing to challenge and change the narrative, change the system. But that starts with us waking up and not accepting status quo. Are there any questions out there? I can keep rambling on about the same stuff over and over again, but we have to understand that this message has to be put out there 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times. It has to be unilateral. It also has to have an agenda written so what we understand what we need to do better in our community so we can become prosperous. And that agenda is not just an agenda, but it needs to be a forefront plan. It needs to be a forefront plan, and it has to be a plan of action that moves our narrative forward. Yes, and I know you understand that progress continues to be made off the backs of Black Americans, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. Yes, it must be repeated over and over and over again. But my thing is this. Right now, we've been averaging right at about 25 to 26 people. For it to be, for the message to get strong, I need everybody who's on here to make sure that we get another person to hear this same conversation next week. And guess what? It also includes you. If I repeat this conversation, you ought to be cheerleading and making sure you sharing to bring as many people to the platform to hear this message. Because the only way we're going to champion and win this is if we challenge the system to make the system work for us. Who and what is on the ballot for November 2nd? Ms. Betty, I will make sure we talk about who's on the ballot for November 2nd. In Chatham County, I'll go ahead and speak on behalf of that. In Chatham County, who's on the ballot? You have Port Wentworth is on the ballot. You have 3 seats in Port Wentworth, 3 seats in Port Wentworth. Garden City, you have 3 seats. Port Wentworth, you have 4 seats. Garden City, you have 3 seats. And then you have what you call a state house seat. State House seat 165 is also on the ballot. And then for everybody in Chatham County, yes, every person in Chatham County has an item on the ballot. And that one item is the E-Splash. Now, we can talk about the E-Splash in another conversation if we need to, but the E-Splash is the special purpose operation sales tax, I believe. But it basically is a sales tax that's collected every 5 to 6 years, sometimes 7, that the revenue is used for a list of items in the community, and that revenue can only be used for those items. We give the citizens the opportunity to vote it up or down, and guess what? If we vote it up, then they get that allotment, and that sales tax is collected over that period of time, and it's only used for those specific items. And so when you see a new Beach High School, you see a new Savannah High School, you see a new Allen's High School, you see reconstruction. I think Windsor Forest, it doesn't say Windsor Forest High School, it just says Windsor Forest. So basically, it's Windsor Forest, the community, Windsor Forest community is on the ballot to either get a K-8 school or extension on the high school. Is used money to be used for the Windsor Forest area. When you see these things on the ballot, these things have to be predicated and used for those communities. East Boston is a great thing in my book. I just want to make sure that when we have elected officials, they're telling everybody else, these are the projects I need for my community. Because if a person is not fighting for the project for their community, then guess what? That community gets left out, and that community doesn't have a school. And this is Jimmy J's opinion. Jimmy J's opinion is this. Jimmy J's opinion is this. The reason why they don't have a problem building splash schools, it has nothing to do with creating better educated spots, because I think that's a secondary or tertiary thing. I think the real reason why they don't mind collecting the money is because of the construction of the schools. And I think that the school system locally in our area does a pretty decent job as far as making sure minority participation is involved. However, I think with Chatham County having 40% African American as a base, we should make that match as far as when we're talking about securing contracts. The city, the county, and all the municipalities, especially Savannah, Georgia, should all have more than 20-30% as far as a match is concerned when it comes to minority participation. And my thing is, I can bring a guest on the show who can talk about minority participation, but these are the kind of things that we need elected officials who are not afraid to bring these pieces to the table. We need to make sure that Garden City, Port Wentworth, Pooler, Savannah, those are the 4 major metropolitan cities in our community. We need to make sure that because of the heavy populations of African American, it should be minority participation involved in all those communities. And that will be a discussion we can have in the next couple of weeks, next couple of days. But I want to make sure that we understand that this community is our community, just like every community across the United States of America. If we're not willing to challenge status quo, we're going to keep getting the leftovers that are given to us. And with that being said, I'm getting ready to sign out because I only got 1 minute left, and I don't want my boss mad at me saying I went over my hour time. So I'm going to say peace to all my family and friends, and who is over diversity in city and county procurement. I'll make sure I put that answer in our next show next week. All right, tune in next week, y'all, 8 o'clock every Friday. It is what it is, and you need to make sure you're on the show. Thanks. Peace.